Welcome to the SPL Rundown. I'm your host, APM. Here with my lovely guests, we have Lermy, Vonny Vonson of Twitter fame, and we have SPL Caster Extraordinaire, Dave Dolson here joins us to talk about all of the Week 2 games. Stick around. A little bit later on, I have an interview with Solar0rTroll, the solo laner for the Solar Scarabs. But first, let's get our toes out here for the no boots meta. This is the first week with no boots. I think we should hop right into the games with the Atlantis Leviathans versus the Jade Dragons. Just a sort of set of stomps here between the Dragons and Leviathans. Game 1, the Leviathan stomp. Game 2, the Dragons really come back and fight very strongly. And then Game 3, it seems like it just went flip-flopped back and forth here between the Leviathans and the Dragons. What are you guys' feelings on this set? I think this is sort of maybe the set of the week going into this weekend, given the teams that we have here. But I don't know, it was maybe a little bit anticlimactic. That's sort of how I felt. How'd you guys feel?
I think set of the week on paper for sure between these two teams. I mean, you could argue top two, definitely top two of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league for sure.
Yep.
And it was fresh out onto a new meta. So I was really intrigued, and really all weekend we were really intrigued how these pros would start to build, what things would look like. And so more than anything, I liked seeing what 2 of the top teams in the league started to prioritize and the way things looked there. I think Yarkor had a fantastic set. Games 1 and 3, the ones that the Leviathans won, he went undying.
Yep.
And just kind of a zoomed out note, I can't believe the year that Yarkor's having. I figured it was going to take a little time to work into that hunter role. But the way he's been playing, particularly in this set, he gets a soul and an Uller. You could argue the Uller. I was going to say 2 not like super easy picks to play.
Sure.
People could maybe talk about the soul and just dropping your ult, whatever that might be. But Uller requires some skill. There's some finesse to that character. And he looked good. 409. And then the Jade Dragons, they're coming into this one off a loss.
Yeah.
I think the big question was, can they bounce back after the loss to the Solar Scarabs? They go down 0-2 after this set. And so it raises, I think, some consistency concerns that, we'll get to their second set in the week, I assume, later on.
Yep.
But starting off the phase 0-2, I don't think anyone expected that from the Dragons.
Yeah. Vonny, Lermy, your thoughts on this set?
Yeah, I think this set was a bit of a show of force for the Leviathans. They had a tough run at the first playoff event that we had, which is kind of been the story of their SPL careers. They're a really, really strong regular season team, but they come playoff time, they're always a little bit lackluster, but playing against the team that did indeed win it, and I think the consensus best team in the league. I mean, I guess probably not. The Bolts are making a pretty strong run for that right now.
After phase 1, after the playoffs, right? I think it was Dragons because they kind of won, but
yeah.
I don't know, man. Where we're at in phase 2 here, I think it's up for grabs.
I will say, for what it's worth, the Leviathans in terms of the draft, I think played it a lot more conservatively. The Dragons pulled out some picks in solo and jungle that we hadn't seen a ton. Yeah. At least for the game 1, the Ronnie, I personally thought Yamoja after the nerfs was going to be an absolute terrible god. I was really curious to see how she performed at the SPL level. And, Rongyu's Rongu.
Yep.
So he put it out, did his thing, and the result was to be expected.
Yeah, honestly, I was kind of surprised, more so by the dragon draft, really, than anything else. Like, you can't tell me the last time you saw Odin in competitive. When was the last time? Because that character has been butt cheeks for a long time. And honestly, he did receive a little bit of a buff, I think, in the mid patch. So that was really, really cool that, we finally get to see him. And honestly, he's a hard counter to a lot of the gods that Leviathans like. So maybe that's like, I don't know, like a super spicy secret sauce.
Sure.
That was a lot of S's up against the Leviathans. Because I mean, Yamoja and Chiron just being like kind of the ish in the duo lane just gets totally destroyed by Odin in the late game. So I mean, he is viable? Question mark. I don't think he's that good, but I think in very niche situations against people that are gonna pick up like the Yamoja, it's just not that bad anymore.
Certainly, it seems to be somewhat the flavor of the week, especially after last week. I think we saw a lot of Odin played in the solo lane for sure amongst, all the teams here. I did want to sort of mention, we think maybe that her would be the one to pick up the Baba Yaga, especially now considering we've basically got an indirect buff to stacking items, given that there are no boots that you have to build. But instead, it was Shinto who played it in 2 of these games, which is, a bit of maybe that's some gamesmanship trying to take it away from Hurrywind. Didn't seem like the Dragons cared too much. They picked Soul and things like that, and I think they were happy with what they were able to get from the draft. But I was just a bit surprised to even see Shinto play the Baba Yaga. It's not something we've really seen from the Leviathans or Shinto, over the past couple years here since Baba has been out. What were your thoughts on Shinto picking up the Baba Yaga here?
Actually, I think because game 2 was game 1 and game 2 where Shinto played it. Game 1, it was fine. I think admittedly it's the type of pick that after a set like this, the Leviathans probably in a situation where Baba Yaga's a good pick will still feel comfortable giving it to Shinto, but it wasn't this knockdown, drag out performance. In the game 1 win, it was a 606 ER core. It was a 107 Julio. I mean, it was, and then Shinto was 2-1-7 in game 1, so it's respectable, but it wasn't this, again, knockdown, drag out. I think is a good way of looking at it. I think game 2 they played it again, and Shinto went 1-3. So I think it's totally a type of pick where in the right environment, I could see the Leviathans picking it more in the future. But I don't know if what I saw was, must ban territory against a guy like Shinto. I love the pick. Lermy brought it up in a balanced meeting, and I played it that day, and it worked wonders, and we saw it a lot in the SPL this weekend. So I totally think it's in the wheelhouse where it's in his god pool. It's not going to be the pick that you have to take away from Shinto. But I think totally something that should be expected if you're going up against the Leviathans and you're thinking, all right, Baba Yaga would be great here. We should probably expect Shinto to play it. I think it's in his wheelhouse, but I say that, and Shinto's the type of guy who will, he just needs one pop-off performance to take over a set. So I think that's totally potential too. I didn't see the craziness in this set from it, from the Leviathans. But with the type of player Shinto is, that could definitely happen in the future.
Yeah, I'm in the same wheelhouse. I think that Baba Yaga has been sleeper OP for a hot second, and now that she has gotten, I guess, the stacking buff from the no boots land is all she needed to exist in the meta. I definitely think she is meta, and now people will actually start to practice her, right? And that's what's cool about it, is because Baba Yaga is such a variable character with all the RNG in her kit. It just feels like when you get that super pop-off 5 red potion, or you get the oval silence that just totally destroys the team fight, those are the moments that, will... I guess it's not it's controlled randomness, right? Because you can't just say, I would like silent oval, please. But, preparing yourself for those situations, being able to cycle through the abilities and get yourself set up for that is, what will make the biggest difference between an okay Baba Yaga player and a really, really good Baba Yaga player.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just bringing it up because, we all often talk about there are certain teams and maybe players who look to, break new metas, and I don't think we've really seen a lot of that from the Leviathans in the past. Is this just a case of this was basically automatically in the meta, and they're like, well, if now it's part of the meta, we gotta add it to the god pool, or is there something more than that going on here?
Yeah, I think that, as Lermy said, I think Baba Yaga has been pretty sleeper for quite some time. In her entire Smite existence, she's never been nerfed, only buffed. And she also got the indirect buff with boots being removed, able to rush stacking. Sharon's coin is obviously the premier pin item as well for mages right now.
Sure.
And she does really well with that. And Stephanie being still competitively banned right now, Tiamat and Raijin have been the top 2 priority bans for mages. And in the games in which they're unavailable, you typically see Baba Yaga selected and the top 3 spot for whichever team fancies her. She's relatively safe. She has really good damage in. She is kind of a high variance god, as you guys have alluded to. But for the most part, I think the meta kind of really fits her right now, especially with gods being locked in that she has pretty good matchups into. Some of the mages are pretty unsafe into Ymir and Yamoja, especially with Odin creeping his way into the meta as well. But she has the mobility through Leap to get out of that. And so I think she's in a really good spot, and we're going to see a lot more of it.
All right, let's move on to the next game of the week here. The Olympus Bolts versus the Camelot Kings. Again, another back and forth set, just like the previous one. You know, the Bolts really sort of run games 1 and game 3, though. I think it was almost like suffocating from when I was watching the games back. And Lazarus has really, I think, vaulted himself maybe into that discussion of being the top jungler in the league so far. You know, it is a bit of a what have you done for me lately type of league, and Laz has sort of been the cream of the crop, I think, lately, as far as junglers are concerned. Your thoughts here? Go ahead, Dolson.
I sat down, we did like a live media day thing with the Bolts yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I sat down, we did like a roundtable thing with all the Bolts, and that was one of the things I brought up was, you know, Laz, I gotta be honest, look, Season 7 was not your best. It was not this at the time, the Renegades, it was not this roster's best. Mm-hmm. But you're playing so well right now. In Season 8, you guys, you know, you're second after the playoffs in Phase 1. You're off to a 3-0 start here in Phase 2. The whole team's playing better, but you specifically are playing a lot better. He's the second most assists in the league in the jungle right now, which he then replied that all of his teammates are stealing his kills. Otherwise, he'd be a little bit higher up. And you'll be able to watch it if you didn't watch it live. But Lasper basically said, look, the team environment's been great. My mental health's been great. I've been working out. I've been eating right. I've been getting sleep. Like, he really just kind of referenced how all of his ducks are in a row, I guess. Like, everything seems to be working out in everything but Smite, which is allowing everything in Smite to work. And I think they have a great team environment. And that's so pivotal to this Bolts team playing the way they are, because it was totally the case with the Renegades last year, where it's, you know, it's the same roster with some solo lane swaps. Of course, Haddock's in now. Mm-hmm. Where you'd see these games where Laz would just pop off and the Renegades would make these miracle runs and then the team would just disappear. It's clearly not all on Lasbro, but in the games that the Bolts won this set, Lasbro was 5-0-10 in game 1, and then 9-0-6 in game 3. So yep. I think Lasbro, it's the right place to start in this set because the guy had a pop-off performance, and if the consistency is able to keep up, and even in a loss, he went 3-1-2, so he had a positive KDA this entire set. It just seems to be such a strong team environment that's allowing Lasbro specifically, and then of course the rest of the team, to play with some comfort, and that's scary, I think, for the rest of the league. He's able to flex around. Played Camazotz a couple times in this set, a Cirquette as well. I don't know why you ever give Laz Cirquette. But just such a driving force for this team. And I think this set is another perfect example. When he got off to a hot start, it felt like the Kings didn't really have a chance.
Yeah, and I think even the game that the Kings won, I think we could pretty clearly say, you know, it was definitely a lot of work for the Kings to come through with that game. I think It was a bit of a game of throws at the end of that game too, as well, if I remember correctly, you know, with the Kings throwing and then the Bolts throwing, and then, you know, two Phoenixes down and you lose a game, you know, you're Titan with like 10% HP. I don't think you can, you know, get too hung up on a loss like that anyway. Hey, Vonny, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
You're fine. Yeah, just to piggyback on what Dolson said about the Bolts and this team working so well together, I think that they have a lot of like hidden synergies that we forgot about. This Barracuda and Vin go back to the SSG team from I believe that was like late 2018. Haddox and Jake were pretty close friends. They queued a lot of rank together even before this roster came together. And Vin, Bear, and Lasbro had the entirety of last year together, as well as Jake, together on that Renegades team. And so adding Haddox wasn't as big of a question mark as a new player would typically be, because of how close I think he was with Jake, and with two frontliners synergizing off of each other. If you have that, you know, outside, it'll be pretty easy to implement that into your game plans. And Venenu, I think, I've always been a pretty harsh critic of Venenu, but I do think that he's always been a player that plays to the level of talent around him. I think if he's on a lower end roster, he'll look that way. But if you put him on a really good team, I think Vin is going to look really good. And he has this year on a pretty diverse variety of picks as well. He's played Morgan, where he is sometimes the primary engage on his team when Jake's playing back. We've seen him play the Merlins. He's put out Bob as well, I believe, so far. And so off how he's been performing, Lasbro also coming in form as well. this team is pretty scary.
Lermy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love the way they've been drafting, right? So, like in game 1, we saw the dirtiest Odin Morgan I have seen in a long time. That is just absolutely an obnoxious thing to deal with, and especially when you are Ymir, Erlang Shen, and Chiron, 3 characters that are just stuck. That is just opening it up for Fafnir or whoever else, like a Xbalanque too, just to run at them and do whatever they want. So, I mean, that was a superb draft. I really think it worked out super well there, and especially like with Odin coming back into it, like the same build that Vonny mentioned was picked up here as well. And it just worked, you know. It looked really, really good. I think, you know, things went a little bit different in game 2, and actually in game 3. I guess in game 2 and 3, Kings banned away Odin because they just did not want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Smart ban. I think
it
that was
is
a smart ban.
just the worst to deal with that kind of stuff, and it's kind of really good into everything the Kings like as well. I mean, especially for Genetics, who has been like the Terra Ymir guy for the past couple of weeks. I mean, that's just kind of like totally shutting him down. And you don't want that to happen to your support.
Yeah. Speaking of Terra, I think we did see Terra played in the solo lane in game 3 here from Variety with the Vampiric Shroud. I don't know, a bit of a new build path for Guardians in the solo lane here. I think we've seen some Sobex maybe later on, or maybe in a previous game. I think it was late in the next Bolts game, actually, where Haddox played Sobex solo and just healed a bunch with this Blood-Soaked Shroud and things like that. Are we going to see some more variety because of, no pun intended there, more variety in the solo lane because there are all these options with the starters now as far as sustain and things like that? I mean, I think Haddox also has been a big proponent of the Heroes Axe here to give shields to his teammates in the team fights and things like that. It seems like there's a lot of things you can do, a lot of different play styles you can play with in the solo lane.
It's actually so dope. Like, from an insider perspective in balance meetings, we're always like, how can we diversify starts and how can we get starter items on the board? And like, just thinking about it, in solo, you can go Fighter's Mask, you can go Vamp Shroud, you can go Bluestone, you can go Axe, and then you can skip starter entirely with like the Mask Start or something else and go like Bumba's Hammer in the end game. Like, that is just such a dope thing to see. That so many different things are available in so many different styles, and it feels like forever, honestly, since we've seen Guardian solos, and I am happy that they are back.
Yeah, I'm just wishing they were picking up Sigil instead of the Vampiric Shroud, right?
One of these days.
One of these days, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more variety in solo lane, especially with the Vamp Shroud buff. And I think that the meta right now seems to be purple being the most contestable buff. We don't see rotations in Mask to blue. If it is an invade, it's oftentimes 2v2, unless the mid game comes. But purple and red seems to be the only buff that's getting invaded with an abundance of numbers. And so Guardians kind of have it pretty nice right now with the ability to just sit there and farm it out. And also Warriors losing their Warrior tab by Boot Spike, which was really big for them over Warriors or over Guardians, also helps them feel a lot more comfortable in the lane, which I think is good because there's also some late game Warriors that we typically don't see because of the fear of them getting bullied out. But after the Arthur and Kakola nerfs, as well as the increased prevalence of Guardians, there's no telling what we'll see. You know, now maybe some Amaterasu's can creep our way into the meta as well. And so I think that it's really nice that it gives way to a lot more versatility in that lane.
And I think one thing, especially about having the starters, is that that having the diversity of starters allows for the diversity of god selections. I think Final Clay played Cabrakan in the first set. I'm a big Cabrakan stan here. I love seeing me some Cabrakan in the solo lane, so that made me very happy. I don't know. I think it's a lot of good things that came as a result of losing Boots, and I think we're going to see just a lot more variety. I think. We'll talk about this a little bit later on with the other King set, but we definitely have to talk about, Mannequins making its way into a lot of these jungle builds. But let's save it for that.
Sure.
All right, I guess we have to just keep talking about Lazara the Bolts here because the next set of the week is the Bolts versus the Titans. And I think the Bolts probably looked even better against the Titans than they looked against the Kings. my notes here is there are some great combo flanks with Lass and Ven. I think Hazer basically made a whole video about it on his YouTube. So go watch that if you haven't. The Titans do show up. They win a game. But it wasn't, again, very convincing. Lazarus just looks unstoppable on this Gilgamesh, though, is sort of my main takeaway from this set. What about you guys?
Gilgamesh, good.
Gilgamesh, good, yeah.
Still very good, yeah.
I think that Laz it's got to be his top pick this year, right? I mean, it's got to be. I don't have the stats page on those picks in front of me. This was a long set. I remember I was casting this one. This was long. The shortest was a 32-minute game in game 3. That's right. There was a very stormy day, and then game 3 was when the Titans' power went out, and then we finally got back into the game. Game 2, I think, was the most exciting of the set. That's the one the Titans won. So definitely not convincing either way, just because it was both teams seemed to be in it right up until the end.
Right.
And so I think the Bolts win, and that puts them up to 3-0 so far in phase 2. I think my takeaway, my overarching takeaway before we talk picks and things like that, team wise, is that the Titans really are starting to play better. This is a team towards the beginning of season 8 and phase 1. I mean, the wheels were off the bus. I mean, this thing, we were spiraling. We couldn't get anything going. If I'm remembering correctly, Gore, our stats guy, at some point mentioned by the end of phase 1, the Titans had like one of the longest win streaks going on as we moved into the playoffs, things like that. This was a roster I remember: Roar, Benji, Cyclone Spin, Paul, Scary D. Scary D was like the only question mark out of the jungle. I still think has a lot of growing to do in that role. I was surprised with how the Titans started season 8, but even in a loss up against the Bolts, a couple ugly games here and there, don't get me wrong, Bolts looked like the better team in this set. But I actually think in general, we've seen more fight out of the Titans in recent weeks, and this is another great example of that. In a long, drawn-out 42-minute game, they're able to peel things back. Things get a little crazy in game 3, not completely lopsided, but I really think I'm surprised and I'm happy that the Titans are starting to look more competitive because it really bunches things up there towards the top. No set is guaranteed. And I think the team, despite some losses, actually looked pretty good here and will hopefully continue to look good in coming matchups.
Yeah.
And Lazra, so he plays Gilgamesh 3 times in this set. But of the 6 games that they've played this week, he has top picked his jungler in 4 of them. And he's looking really good despite, selecting his jungler top 3 consistently in almost every draft, being open to counter picks. Even getting a god as strong as Gilgamesh, teams are only allowing something like that open with the intent of picking matchups into him that can perform well and shut him down. And he's still having really, really good performances. And game 2 was really interesting because I remember when Haddock third picked the Odin here, I was curious to see what he was going to pick into the Osiris because that god Bumba abusing late game is an absolute exploit. It is ridiculous. And he picked the Odin third, which I didn't think was particularly good into what the Titans had top 3. They had Tiamat, Loki, and Osiris. Osiris, Tiamat obviously can get out of the cage. Loki does have to use the ultimate, but either way, they still had 2 gods in which they picked to escape the cage. But third picking the Odin there, I think really indicated to me and the rest of the league, because this guy got picked some more down the line in the other games, that people are really starting to value him, and it's not just a fluke pick anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that while Odin does have his problems, I think in particular matchups, especially when you're combining Odin and Gilgamesh, a lot of the things that counter Gilgamesh do not counter Odin.
Yeah.
Like for instance, Artemis and Hebo are 2 characters that are really, really good into Gilgamesh because of the CC immunity and slow immunity, but they stuck into Odin. They are so bad into Odin because you just get trapped in the cage and you are dead. And so, forcing them to kind of pick between, okay, if you want to counter my Gilgamesh, be my guest to do it. And, that time it didn't unfortunately work because, the Titans did end up just playing the late game a little bit better. That was a 42-minute game, so it's not like you can really say, that both teams were playing better than another, right? It was really very neck and neck at that point. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised it went that long. I was pretty impressed by Scary's Loki, except for that one little mishap that we're not going to mention. And I think that him on the Loki definitely looked a lot better than him on the Kali. Kali does have a very, very high win percentage right now, just in general Smite. Like, I think she's honestly top 5 right now, which is crazy.
Yeah, not SPL.
Not in the SPL.
I don't think she's won in the SPL, right? I think she's
I'm not
0-4.
confident that god is very good in the SPL, but if you're playing in your casual games, you have the stats to back you up, just like Hades and Arachne are good, right?
Yep.
I guess that's the type. I guess there are certain gods that just require such coordination to play around. Kali, she draws so many eyes towards her. In a coordinated team, I think, can punish that. In my ranked games, a Kali jumps into the back line. There's no peel to be found. They set up the ultimate and just rip through everyone because nobody's talking. Nobody's peeling the Kali. There's no lockdown put in place. So I think it's so hard because I want to see more of it because I think it's a fun pick. Just a fight, the one fight where the Kali just goes off. It's just so much fun to watch. It just seems so coordinated at the SPL level, regardless of where the team is, whether it's top or bottom. It just seems so coordinated. I think it's just gonna be such a hard pick to pull off. I mean, Scary went 1-7 in Game 3 on the Kali. Granted, the Bolt's probably one of the most coordinated teams in the SPL at the moment. So I think
we made that argument.
We did make that argument.
But I'll agree with your point,
Bolt,
Dolson, right? Like, we didn't see any Kali player have a particularly good week this
it wasn't
weekend.
just
Cuvo didn't look great. Johnny didn't look great. No one really seemed to excel with Kali. And in fact, I think the people who didn't play Kali probably felt a lot better. I did want to follow up on your Odin Gilgamesh thing. It kind of seems like their ults are kind of similar, as well. They're both sort of caging you in, and one cage, you can get out of with some slow immunity and things like that. But wait, there's another cage, and when you add a Morrigan on top of that too, I think that's just a lot of things to worry about, right? Yeah. It's gonna be an Odin cage. Is it gonna be a Gilgamesh ult? There's just a lot of different interactions and different ways to control where the enemy team can go, and it just provides so much opportunity and options. All right, let's move on to the next set of the week: the Atlantis Leviathans versus the Oni Warriors. I think two of the quicker games. At least game 1 was very quick, 20 minutes. Game 2, the Oni Warriors were able to stall it out much longer in game 2. It goes on 42 minutes, but still ends up being a 2-0 here for the Leviathans. I actually, don't really have too many notes for this set. Game 1 was just very well controlled by the Leviathans. In game 2, I think the Onis, they had a bit of control in the mid game, but really weren't able to profit off of that, and they take a bad fight at a tier 2 tower, and it just sort of rolls down the hill from there. Dolson, sorry for interrupting you there.
No. I nearly interrupted you. I don't know. I have similar kind of thoughts to the Oni Warriors as I do to the Titans, where you look at this roster and you're thinking, God, you combine some back-to-back world champs, or one and plus Kivo Fred, and then you get a bunch of the guys from SSG. Like, there's no way this team is bad. Like, and they've had just real tough time, I think, finding how they want to play together. Always worth mentioning. I think you have to throw a bit of a life raft. They have a couple guys, a few of their teammates playing on Canadian ping, European, and I think at some point, though, you got to look beyond the ping, look more at decision-making, things like that. I mean, game 1 is just brutal. I mean, it's 15-0. The Leviathans, they start off hot. They run away with it. Yarkor on Danza gets ahead, and that's the type of pick that you can't let get ahead against you, because
I think it's just Yarkor you can't let get ahead, right?
Yeah, Yarkor as well. It's almost mean, I think, to the Oni Warriors to talk about game 1 all that much, because I mean it was brutal. It was one of those games where nothing goes your way, and it was almost nice by the Leviathans to finally end things pretty quickly. And I think important that we saw some signs of life in game 2 from the Oni Warriors. It was important that even in a loss, they at least, put up a fight. They got some kills. They got things going. I think Vote had an okay game on the Jingwei. Cuvo played the Kali. Didn't love it again, if you're looking at the pick specifically. I don't know. I think this is the type of set where the Leviathans, a very strong team who knows their identity, beat a team who doesn't have a consistent identity figured out yet. And there's still time, but there's only so much more time we can say that there's still time for the Oni Warriors to kind of figure things out. But it wasn't this set. It really wasn't this set. The Leviathans were just too good. It was more just slow, like a bit of a slowdown than anything it felt like in game, where the Oni Warriors they did pull some kills back. They kind of stalled things out. I don't know if the Leviathans ever felt like they weren't in control. Pinto on this Raijin only died a couple of times in a 42-minute game. Felt untouchable on the back line. And so I think game 1's a forgettable one for the Oni Warriors, and it's a good set for the Leviathans to improve to undefeated, well, remain undefeated.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it was just important that the Oni Warriors put up a fight in game 2, because things can spiral quickly. You lose back-to-back games where you're getting blanked and it's low 20s. I mean that is brutal on the mental. So I liked seeing game 2 extend out a little bit. But the Leviathans are just a better team right now.
Yeah.
This was always going to be tough for the Warriors.
Lermy, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just keep having to go back to the Kali, man. I just don't see a way that this character works in a coordinated play. And it's been done before. People like Cherio have seen a lot of really great success on this character, but especially playing from ping, right? Because Cuba's one of those people that is stuck over in Europe right now, unfortunately. So you just need to be on point if you're going to play Kali. And I think, especially into a character as safe as Raijin, and to someone with as good a peel as Tyr, Chiron is also another character that can kind of just peel you off in so many different ways, come back to life even, if he's lucky. It's a tough ask, I think, to pick something like that. Like we talked about a while ago, I think even at the beginning of Season 8, like what are the gods the people are going to play when they're at high ping? And I think that Kali just needs to be wiped from that list, because it is just a large ask, and I don't really think it's possible for most people.
Sure. Vonny?
Yeah, Cuvo, Fred, and Dardes have had some pretty interesting gods played this split, and I think a lot of them are revolved around gods, as Lermy alluded to, that excuse me, are a lot more playable on ping. And game 1 was pretty uneventful. Leviathans clean sweep. Game 2, they punched back a little bit, went 40 minutes, but there was a dual side Phoenix Siege in which I just felt absolute pain for Dardes. I couldn't even call it a Bush Beats, because I'm sure he's on higher ping than me being in Europe, but I'm a pretty high ping player as well, being on the West Coast, and I play on 120. And it can be really difficult to beats react to some things like Tear Fearless and Blink Sobek block. And I saw him get Blink Fearless, and he beats in mid-air, and before he can get off one ability, he died. And the fight was close because they killed Panty Tom and Trade, and if he was able to get off anything of value, I think they actually turned that. But, it's just so unfortunate, given his current situation, that he just can't perform at that level. But Nika has been playing really, really well. They did begin to strength a little bit before last playoffs. And so I do have no doubts, though, that once these guys do get all settled, they will be one of the stronger teams we have. There's no question at all about their macro. We know what Neil's capable of when it gets to those late game shot calling situations. And so once they are able to settle that, I think this team will be pretty strong.
Yeah, speaking of... go ahead, Lermy, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Nika is the absolute rock of this team. He is holding them together, doing, the best he can considering the situation. I think, even though King Arthur did get hit with a couple of big nerfs, he's still so hard to kill, man. Yeah. He just spins on your face, ults you for your entire health bar, and then you're sad. That's just the ins and outs of playing against King Arthur. And so, as long as he's able to continue to have consistent performances, I feel like there really is a chance for the Oni Warriors to see some more success, but I think they really need to just kind of not go back to the table, right? Because I don't think that their draft was really bad. I think that they just kind of need to recognize a little bit more of the situation that they're in and acknowledge, okay, we need to stop forcing stuff that's not working, because some of the stuff I feel like, it just doesn't seem right for them.
Sure.
I think, and these are kind of my final thoughts on the Warriors. I can't remember admittedly if they played another set this weekend. But I think because we have seen the Oni Warriors that we expected to see, and it was during the group phases of the Phase 1 playoffs, and that was they 2-0'd the Solar Scarabs. They went to 3 against the Kings, and they won in 3 against the Dragons, and so they moved on. The Kings didn't move on, so we've seen the Oni Warriors that we expected to see. So we know it's in there, right? It's finding that footing during the regular season. It's always been the conversation around the whether it was SK or PK, or maybe now it's the Oni Warriors, where during the regular season they have rough performances sometimes, but then during the playoff events they just show up, right? And so we have seen it, and I think that's the important thing to remember, is we have seen that out of the Oni Warriors. It's just we need to make a habit of seeing it a little bit more often.
Yeah, the word that every player tells me when I ask about what they need to improve on is consistency. And I think that's essentially what you're pointing to there, Dave, is they just need some more consistency. I think probably some of that will come because, I've heard some rumors that Neil is probably heading down to Atlanta relatively soon here within the next month or two. So I think, as the players are able to come to the studio and maybe just, have lower ping, I think maybe that consistency will figure itself out a little bit.
Sure it will.
Yeah. The next set of the week here, the J Dragons versus the Valhalla Valkyries.
Oof.
Yeah. Every week we talk about the Valks and how the ping is affecting them. And, I don't know if there is too much to say here.
I think
pretty quick games from the Dragons. Dolson, go ahead.
This is the set that the Dragons needed, like ASAP, right? I mean, they're joking on Twitter. This is a very confident team. Nobody was really ever worried about them. But starting off the phase 0-2, you lose to the Scarabs. That's rough. You lose to the Leviathans. That's tough. You gotta turn the corner and get back to your winning ways. So like this type of set arrived for the Dragons right at the right time. And then the second most important thing is that when you get into a set like this, and this is no disrespect to the Valkyries, but it's a very winnable set. This is a should-win set for the J Dragons, and it's important that in a set like this, when you win, you win hard, right? You don't go to 3. Things aren't close back and forth. Like, I don't think the confidence was ever really shaken for the Dragons, but to really get things back on track, you need a convincing win, in and out. Sub 30-minute games on both, and that's what happens. I don't know. This is such a hard Valkyries team to figure out, because game 1 was just brutal. Game 2 was as well. I feel like there are these moments where, really game 2, I think, Johnny on the Apollo really dove in and had these kind of comeback kills, and I think that, or cleanup kills maybe, and that sort of equalized his KDA a little bit. Admittedly, for us casters and analysts, these are the harder ones to break down, because it's just kind of entire team performances, and it felt like in every facet of the game, early, mid, late, laning, invades, macro, micro, it just felt like the J Dragons were the better team in this set. The duo lane continues to have some struggles here for the Valkyries. Everyone did. I can't just throw Raffer and Polito under the bus. Everyone for the Valkyries did in this set. I think the days of you still have time to turn it around. The window's starting to close a little bit on that. I mean, we still have half a year, so that I'll say it. There is still time, but I don't know if we've seen marked improvement from this Valkyries team in a little while, and it certainly didn't come here in this set. The J Dragons, they were just the better team, and sometimes that's the way it is. And so, ping issues for sure for this Valkyries team, and this one was just It was tough, but it was what the Dragons needed to get their phase back on.
Yeah. Lermy, Vonny, your thoughts on this set?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the sentiment. This is kind of just what the doctor ordered for the Dragons. But I mean, at the same time, I do, I appreciate the experimentation we saw out of the Valkyries. The Apollo
Absolutely.
jungle coming back, Kuzenbo, Neath, like those are characters that we haven't seen in a hot second, but I just don't see where those characters have value in this current meta. I think that especially Neath, who does really well with it, like a full power build. I think that she would thrive in the Bluestone meta of like 1 or 2 patches ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we're kind of in the bow boy build,
yeah.
I think that she kind of has lost her moment.
Sure.
And I guess kind of similar with Kuzenbo. Kuzenbo's incredibly safe for a character, but he kind of has the Sobek problem where he throws himself at the enemy team and he's got to find a way out. Like that's his engage strategy: is I blink, I press 4, and maybe I pull you. Just not the same level of consistency that you get from a lot of other supports that are very good right now.
Yeah. Vonny?
Yeah, there's not much to comment on this Valkyries team.
Yeah.
But I will say that I was watching this game with a friend, and I told him, I said, look, man, if the J Dragons lose a game here, or I went as far as to say if one of them is close, I think this set is like a loss for the Dragons, because they were a bit rolling coming in, losing to the Scarabs, who, Worth is that, man. He is just in those guys' head rent-free. I would never pick the Dragons over the Scarabs, ever. Or over Steven Zappas, I'll clarify, for the rest of my life. But yeah, they also obviously took the loss as well to the Leviathans, and it was really good for them to look well. And I think that Sam's picks, he's looked best on the Mercury this season. But everyone knows that, so nobody lets him get Mercury.
Sure.
He also has looked pretty good on Finn, and Dolson talked about how he hasn't looked that well on his signature Thor anymore. And to me, he kind of is undergoing a forced, evolution right now. It reminds me of the start that Adapting had of that Season 4 Energy team, where at the start of that season, it was a Raven Concolin tank jungle meta. Adapting was a traditional full damage hard carry jungler, and he struggled. And it's not necessarily a tank jungle meta right now, but it is a lot more utility style. And I think that's why you see guys like Penny Tom looking really strong, Lasbra as well. And that's not to say that Sam doesn't have the ability to do so, but it's obviously not his default play style. And so Fenrir is a god who he's comfortable on and also fits the meta. But I think that once he truly finds his place in the meta and can ingratiate himself into the play style of jungle right now, that's when this Dragon team will reform or return to the dominant style that we're used to seeing him at.
I don't know if Sam's going to get to play Mercury, though, which sucks. I don't know. I love watching that pick. I feel like it gets first banned against the Dragons basically every single game. And I think that's an important secondary, post-cursor to what I said earlier on about the Thor. I mean, it was just, it was the one game. Didn't love it. I still think it could look good in the right circumstance. But Sam as a jungler this year, I mean, has still looked incredible. I mean, 12, 3, and 7 on the Fenrir's looked great. The Hun Bats was awesome as well. And I think shows some flexibility in the styles of picks that he can play. You want the big engage, you want the Sonic Boom, the Fear No Evil. Great, you got it. You want the solo pick style of play with the Fenrir. Apparently that's going to work as well. And so, tough for the Valkyries that they had to play the O2 enraged Jade Dragons, because I think that probably played into it a little bit. I think this was the Jade Dragons team that was very, very dialed in and in need to get back into the winning column.
Dolson, remind me who casted this set, if you remember.
That was J-Mac and Hindu.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Shout out to J-Mac on first SPL weekend. I think...
Yeah, man, killed it.
I think he was the one who said it just seems like, the Jade Dragons, they just run as a 5v5 at the Valkyries, and they're probably going to win that fight. There's nothing super special about it.
Right.
And I think that was basically what we saw in the over and over again. They're like, hey, let's just take the 5v5. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter when. We feel like we are going to win a 5v5 against this team, no matter what. Dragons
were the better team. I think top to bottom, the Dragons were just better. And that's when you get games like this.
Sure. The last set of the week here, the Camelot Kings the Solar Scarabs. You know, the scoreline didn't favor my Bug Boys. I will say that.
No.
But I think, you know, they were looking okay. I'm
My
a little
man's
bit
got
concerned.
a Kings jersey on, talking about the Bug Boys. What's
Look, I support all of the SPL players. You know, I'm a wonderful supporter of the SPL, so I have merch from all the teams.
That's
so
right.
let's not
No, you're right.
It's not I'm not hating or anything on the Scarabs, but it was a bit of a wet fart here from the Solar Scarabs.
I think you can copy and paste the little tangent I went on at the beginning of the Dragons and the Valkyries set just now. Replace the word dragons with kings and Valkyries with scarabs, and I think the point probably still stands. I mean, these are two sub 25-minute games, and the kings were just better in every facet of the game than the Solar Scarabs were. I think there's a worthwhile conversation to be had around Inbound and his Umoja. Gore tweeted it out. I think he has a 7% win rate on that pick. I think the Scarabs are 1-7, maybe 2-8 on that type of pick, which is not 7%. But I think season 8 is the 1-7 or 2-8. Inbound, I think, has made strides from season 7 and hasn't made all of the same mistakes at the same basis that he did in season 7. So that's my long-winded way of saying he's looked a lot better in season 8. I don't know if the Umoja has, though. I think that's the type of pick where you either ban it if you're worried about the other team playing it, if you're not gonna be able to play it yourself. And I don't know if the Kings, they have genetics. Genetics is going to slam Ymir Terra regardless, it feels like, of what's left up. I don't know. I think Inbound, again, has improved a lot. Don't love the Umoja, though. I think that one always gives my eyebrows a bit of a raise when the Scarabs lock it in. And, I hope he turns around that storyline in my head. But unfortunately, game 1 of this set on the Umoja, again, nothing was going right for the Scarabs, but the Umoja was part of that story that wasn't going right.
Sure.
And so I think that's something the Scarabs probably need to talk about as a team.
Yeah.
I feel like Bobby looks nuts when he plays things like Ymir and Serket and even Fafnir throwing it back to that. Like
they locked in Hercules, and I was like, hell yeah, you're giving Inbound the Hercules back, and then they lock in Umoja later on, and
no,
it was tough. I agree. This looked really good.
It just is so unfortunate, right? Because we don't know what's going on in scrims, right? We have no idea if Bobby is popping off in scrims with the Umoja. But when it comes to game day, we just are not seeing it. And I think from the outside looking in, as much as we know, it feels like he should just do what looks to us to work. Whatever works for them. If it's working in scrims, by all means, that is warrant enough to pick it. But from what we understand of it, it really just seems like there's a simple solution.
Yeah, coming into this set, I remember thinking that draft-wise, this was going to be really good for the Scarabs, because I know the Serket was a pretty popular pick for Bobby, and he's really strong on it. And I was like, I think he's looked really strong on these assassin supports, which I think have really good matchups into the Terra and Ymir that Genetics is going to play. And the Serket didn't get banned until the second phase of game 1. And I was really surprised to not see them take that top, especially when Genetics top 2'd his Terra. The Odin also was banned in the second phase of this set, and the Scarabs did opt to take that top 2 in game 2, but yeah, I just think they were unfortunately outclassed by the Kings, and it's always so difficult for me when I'm doing my in-game voting to choose for the Scarabs, because on one hand I have a pretty big bias for them. I am a box native, I looked up to those guys for a long time, and even going back to the eager days, I've always been a huge fan of Zap, but sometimes they play the dragons, right? And they'll take the dragons down, or they'll take the boats to a set of 3 30-minute bangers. And you're like, wow, this team is really showing signs of promise. And then they come drop a dub against the Kings. And if they can find the consistency I think that this team could actually, turn a lot of heads and shut up a lot of haters, because people love to hate the Scarabs, but I mean, they definitely deserve to be here. And when they look good, they look damn good.
Yep.
I did want to mention the Osiris jungle here that Twig played in both of these games. I think he even went the upgraded Mannequin's Mace here in game 1. Your thoughts on sort of Osiris being able to abuse this Mannequin's starter now that it's finally sort of working how it's supposed to work, I think, in Season 8. It did get a couple of buffs and things like that as well. But that's part of getting it to work how it's supposed to work, I think. That's I'm glad it's here, but it seems to be Captain Twig's basically favorite starter. I don't think he chose a different jungle starter item all weekend long. What is this Osiris with the mannequins able to do in these games that Twig just likes so much?
So, mechanically, it works really well, right? Because Osiris is able to get those last 2 in his chain to be the full AoE. And typically, when you're killing a camp, you want to try and get as many kills as you can at once. And especially with the way that Mannequins works, if you're able to get that kill with the burn, which, you slap them twice with the double AoE, you probably will be getting that kill with the burn. That's going to give you sustain. So just on a mechanics level, it works really well together. In terms of, as a jungler, I think that is kind of the last kind of step that Osiris as a character really needed to come back in that, because, again, we are kind of in the meta where the 3 frontline is just the thing to do at this point.
It also fits into the playstyle that Twig has always had. I consider him a back camp bandit. If you're not on those timers off cooldown, he will be. And Osiris is a god who we all know about his strength in solo lane with the mass start and the Bumbus finish, but I think he's pretty good in the jungle, especially with Mannequin. This god in mid at level 2 has absolutely insane pressure. There's not many gods that can out-secure neutrals from him. And when you look at the way that he likes to play the early game, if he's able to secure the neutrals, especially on dual side, that allows him to pressure out for a potential dual lane gank. And if you swap those, then he's just invading your back camps. And some junglers will like the ego contest and meet you there, but Mannequins completely eliminates any possibility of that. Because if he catches you in the jungle at level 2 with Mannequins, you are most likely dead.
Yeah. Which
is a play he actually went for in the previous set with the boats. If I recall, there was a mechanical misplay in one of his abilities, and he dropped the kill. But we still saw in that moment the mindset behind this Mannequins pickup that he likes to go for.
Sure. Any other thoughts about this set as a whole, or maybe the whole of SPL Week 2 and this new no boots meta?
Started off really long and really sped up there. Those really long 3-game sets at the beginning, and then things really picked up there towards the end. In general, it was a lot of fun to cast, of course. I think a lot of fun to watch as well while the teams are figuring things out. We had some entertaining sets this weekend. It's so unique, and outside of even just the boots and the item paths and the itemization, the map got changed around a little bit. And one thing I've been asking the supports a lot is where does your green buff priority lie? I don't know. I don't know if we saw. I don't know if we saw huge, because I wonder if it's almost awkward to if you're in lane, you're brawling it out, because that's a pretty decent route to go all the way back to the green buff to pick it up if it respawns, whatever that might be. Lasber almost joked about how it's just another camp for him to farm up, and if Jake happens to be walking by it in the jungle, if he goes back to base and comes back through there, he'll pick it up. But that's been a pretty fun thing to follow as well. Watch how the map changes and all that have affected it. And I don't know if the meta is solidified yet. I think there's going to be a lot more experimentation, more changes. I think we have another couple weeks maybe before we start to see things stabilize and see more standard, which I think is great, because chaos is fun to watch and fun to cast. So it was a fun week for sure. Plenty of storylines and plenty of good games.
I think the best part about this patch is that it is 6 weeks long, so the fact that we are on pretty similar balance for the majority of the patch is going to hopefully put us in a state where, eventually we kind of figure out what's going on. I think this is one of the biggest shakeups that Smite has had in a very long time, if ever. And so just kind of having any idea of what the hell's going on is just a really fun time to see. I love to see the experimentation, pulling out different things. Like we talked about Odin, we talked about Kali. Just so many different characters finally seeing the light of day after what feels like a while, if not a much longer while.
Anything to add from you, Vonny?
Yeah, I think that Smite feels kind of fast right now, with the removal of boots and kind of the acceleration of builds. But I'm really most excited for next week because I still think for the most part, a lot of people still wanted to get a little bit more comfortable with boots. We saw, about a god or two slip in that we haven't seen, but I think next week is when Pandora's box is really going to open now that people have had some time to really scrim and play that first week of SPL without boots. I think next week is when things are really going to get in a full swing and we're going to see people pulling out some spice.
Yep.
This week, I had the pleasure of talking with the solo laner for the Solar Scarabs, Solo0rTroll, to talk about Phase 1 and Phase 2, and maybe look back on his SPL career on the whole as well. Hey guys, I'm here with the solo laner for the Solar Scarabs, Solo0rTroll, to talk a little bit about Phase 1, Phase 2, and his SPL/SML career over the past couple years. So let's start with Phase 1. Bit of a new team. We've seen all of the roster apocalypse that happened over, I guess, the winter and things like that. Can you talk about maybe your first impressions of this team starting out in Phase 1?
Yeah, I mean, it went better than expected. We're a brand new team with 2 rookies. I'm still kind of new to the SPL a little bit. I've only played like half a phase in 2 seasons. And I thought it would take a bit more time to kind of mesh. But it was actually a solid Phase 1. Like we ended up being the Kings going to playoffs. I think we were very happy with that.
Yeah. Is there anything? You said you were maybe surprised, but I think there's like growing pains with all the new teams, right? Do you think you guys sort of exceeded maybe your expectations of what those growing pains would be? I feel like you guys were able to take some games off of top teams, and I think you guys even beat the Dragons in a set. Even before the group stages and things like that in Phase 1. So was it more than your expectations and things like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I felt pretty confident in my our ability to play well. So I figured we'd show up when it mattered because I'm more of a game day player than a scrim day player, and so is Layers. And I thought if we work together, I mean, when the jungler and the solo laner are on the same page and they're diving, it's really hard to if the jungle and solo laner are on fire, it's really hard to lose. And so I figured in that aspect we'd probably win a lot of games. But yeah, I mean, it kind of exceeded my overall expectations as a whole.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about playoffs. Obviously, not the outcome that I think you guys were hoping for, but the group stage allowed you guys to maybe get some of this, maybe not LAN experience per se, but tournament experience for some of your younger players like Layers and Boronic. Is that? And I mean, that's something that you have a lot of. I think you played in Splice and in Worlds tournaments and things like that in the past. Do you think that the experience of just getting to playoffs, even though it wasn't the desired outcome, was helpful for the rookies on your team?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it was the first best of 5 that I've played in a long time. And it was the first best of 5 that anyone's played in a while. And so I think I think especially losing as well, we'll always remember that loss, especially with the way we played. And we pretty much did nothing. It was an autopilot loss, pretty much. And I think we've had that happen a lot in SPO, throughout our course. And I think, but that LAN game was more memorable because it was a tournament game, and it was also a best of 5. And I think that kind of sticks in our heads more, and kind of, the next LAN tournament or the next time we play Leviathans, we're kind of we needed to step it up because they were a really good team. We got stomped, and then the team that stomped us got stomped, by Bolt. So it's if we really want to win Worlds eventually or be the best, then we have to, climb that ladder. And I think it's good to lose in a way, that game that we had. because we definitely learned from it and we remember it for
Sure.
next time. So
Sure. So you've played with a couple different sets of like SPL veterans. I'm thinking of like Aurora and Cyclone Spin, and now you're teaming with Zap and Slaney. Some of these people who've had a lot of time in the league. Can you, and maybe this is better for later on, but can you talk a little bit about how the team dynamic maybe is a little bit different between some of these different veteran players?
yeah, let me think. I mean, it's always going to change, player to player,
Mhm.
but Zapman, it's very interesting hearing his views on the game. He's kind of like our, leader of sorts, like strat wise.
Mhm.
It's kind of cool to seeing how the different play styles kind of differ. Like
Mhm.
Zap is more of like a how should I say this? He's more of like a like PK you saw, he's more of like we can always win late game,
Mhm.
just farm, it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
And he's really smart with like objective calls. And Aurora is really good. If I remember at obviously I'm soloing, so it's not like I know for sure,
Sure.
but
Sure.
from what I remember, Aurora was really good at like fighting the mid 3v3 stuff like
Mhm.
that and dueling with Cyclone. Um Whereas Zap is more of like a team fight, like let's do this objective, like invade that buff and they go over there,
Mhm.
like basically controlling the entire map from dual lane.
Sure.
And Cyclone's more of a, just like kind of sit back and do his thing. And Zap's more of like a control the team a little bit. So it is kind of cool seeing how it differs,
Yeah. Yeah. You talked a little bit about how you felt, confident in yours and Layer's ability to, maybe pop off and things like that. And I think as phase one was sort of winding down and going into phase two, I think we've seen a lot of that from you guys. I think especially versus the Jade Dragons. And so we sort of have to talk about how you guys are the dragon killers here. And I think a lot of those games, it was you and Layers really, setting the pace and running the game for a lot of it. How does it that this team with all these new players is able to beat the Jade Dragons so consistently?
That's a good question, honestly. Like, I don't know, Zap has their number, I guess,
Yeah,
and I kind of have their number too. I beat them at
sure.
the MSI tournament
Hmm.
2019, and I've beat them I think all year on season 6, except for the one time I subbed in phase 1.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I always get these random wins versus the Dragons. I don't know what if they just like start trolling versus me or if if I just get lucky or
Hmm.
what. But I mean, they're a great team. They're obviously like the best and it's just kind of funny to like get these random wins. But I think it just comes down to like we show up on the day that it matters,
Hmm.
especially with Dragons, because they're like such
Hmm.
a really good team that they've always been at the top since their inception,
Hmm.
and maybe we just bring the A game, um, and like I said, the solo lane jungle like the front line just runs the game for the most part.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if me and Lair show up, then I guess we show up on the days that we verse Dragons. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about maybe the synergy that you and Layers are building up? You've mentioned a couple of times in this interview already that you feel like you guys have, like this self confidence and maybe this bit of swagger about you guys. Can you talk about like maybe where that comes from and how you were able to build that synergy up over this first phase?
Yeah, so like when we first started playing, I might leak a little bit here, so sorry to my teammates. But when we first started playing, started this phase, we weren't very good at like 2v2ing. Like we'd
Hmm.
always get 2v2, like one of us would die or we'd both die, or layers would come at the wrong time. I would have like infinite pressure in lane, go invade, and he wouldn't be there. He'd be farming backcamps or something. And
Hmm.
so we started spam queuing ranked a lot to like kind of like play together, and we'd go in comms and we both try hard and try and invade buffs. And we kept doing that for like a few weeks, and we got really good at like 2v2ing, especially in scrims as well. We pretty much never lose a 2v2, especially with the picks I play and the picks he plays. But then we started having to go to dual lane, and we had to like kind of it got to a point where we were just spamming blue buffs invade every game, and like
Hmm.
the other team would see it every time. Like layers would walk over wards, we'd get their blue, we'd maybe can't gank the solo laner. But I mean, it doesn't really matter killing like a level like 14 Nike, getting a blue that when we're losing our red, our purple,
Hmm.
oracles, all that other stuff on the other side of the map. And so we started shifting our priorities from layers to gank the dual lane, and we've had a bit of trouble finding like a lot of success with that. Some games we do, but it's still like an ongoing process. We're still like trying to work around controlling the entire map. But we definitely have the solo lane like 2v2 down,
Hmm.
and we pretty much just got that because we sucked at it and we just tried to get better at it. So
That's how you get better at things. You gotta first recognize what you suck at, and then just work to rectify that. And I'm glad that you guys have been able to identify it, and it seems like you've been able to put into practice what you learned in scrims and in ranked and things like that, which is always really good to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to maybe get your thoughts on this no boots meta. Obviously don't need to give anything away like what gods and stuff you're thinking about playing, but it's sort of shaken up quite a bit of things here. Especially, we're seeing more guardians now in the solo lane. We're seeing Vamp Shroud in the solo lane. We're seeing Fighter's Mask starts. We're seeing Axe starts. We're seeing Bluestone starts. It seems just like a depth of variety now in the solo lane. Not just in the solo lane. I think across all the roles, there's been a big boost to what is viable. How are you feeling about this? The no boots change and things like that. It's a pretty drastic change for Smite.
Yeah, it's probably the single biggest change Smite Hi-Rez has ever done. And
Yeah.
I think it's honestly a fantastic change. Like it's a big breath of fresh air, and you're able to build a lot of other things. And I think it obviously affects the entire like every role as a whole. But I think it probably isn't too much effect on tanks. Maybe like solo laners too much because you just go best play first item,
Right.
or whatever, or Glad Shield or Son of Gaia, and it's relatively the same. You just build this whatever you built before. But, like it really affects mid lane because you can build Warlock Sash, and I love the item, and I've been saying item's really good.
Yeah.
And now that boots are gone, you're not slow. I think there's also room for like Bancrofts as well. You've seen like Kibo and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's room for Book of Thoth and ADCs like Craig can go ring. ACs you can rush. Devos or whatever it may be.
All the bows, right? That's the new meta build, right? Build all the bows.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like supports you rush Thebes and get that before like Raffer would rush Thebes on Geb and he before boots and he's so tanky. And now you just rush Thebes and you're like really tanky.
Yeah.
But of course, the mages also are more powerful, so you die faster as well. But it kind of evens out a little bit in my opinion. But like the solo laners, it's a bit weird because like I was thinking like if tank boots are gone, maybe like solo laners like Chiron would be like a bit better. Like it can maybe play more mages or more hunters or assassins because the one thing stopping them like throughout the past was like warriors wrestling from the other seasons, and then now it was tank boots because once they get tank boots, they're unkillable.
Yeah.
And I was thinking maybe if you rush like a Chiron solo with Bluestone Trans, you'll be stronger than like a Gaia rush, right?
Maybe.
But if people rush like breastplate, it's a bit hard because
Sure.
one defensive item is better than one like trans item. So that's the problem right there. So maybe it's not as viable yet anymore, or viable yet. But yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's just a lot of fun, and there might be room for like mages and solo lane as well because you can rush warlocks, whatever. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, we will see. I mean, there is probably a couple weeks here where the patch is still being worked out. I imagine even amongst USPL players. So yeah. I imagine there's still going to be some variation at least in this week and maybe the week after this week as well that we'll see in these SPL games. I did want to ask, it was recently announced that you guys are going to be playing in the studio during this week 3 upcoming against the Bolts. Now, what are your thoughts about that? I'm sure long time coming for you. This is the whole point, right, of moving all the way to Alpharetta and things like that. Are you guys excited for that or nervous? How are you feeling going into this first studio game?
Yeah, I'm personally extremely excited and honored, and I'm very lucky to be able to, be the first set to play in the studio. Very excited. I'm not sure how my team is feeling. I'm pretty sure they're just like excited about it too. But I'm personally really excited because I love the studio. It was like the first time I've played SPL. I was like in the studio.
Sure.
Like they've been playing SPL like Zap and all that. They've been playing since before the studio. But
yeah,
for me, it's a bit more special because it's like it's gonna be like a blast from the past almost. Like a nostalgia walking in there.
Yeah.
And the land is always really nice. I mean, I'm more of like I try to make mechanical plays and all that. So being like on like lower ping is a lot more fun. But yeah, I'm personally excited.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you're gonna be hitting some more hurt pulls is what I'm hearing from that answer, right?
Hopefully, yeah.
The pull blinks and things like that. We love seeing all that great mechanical skill that you guys are able to showcase us.
Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit to your Smite career on the whole. You've played in the SPL now for been a sub here and there for the better part of the past 3 years, I want to say. You've been SML, SEC, these sorts of just below the SPL level for a long time as well. Can you talk about the different experiences you've had in these sorts of different levels of play as far as competitive goes, and then maybe also talk about how your perspective towards Smite or SPL, has maybe changed over the years. You've, I think, been playing competitively now for maybe the past 4 or 5 years, right? So I'm sure, your thoughts have changed quite a bit, especially, as you've grown up as well.
Yeah, this is a definitely interesting topic. So I started out in like SOC, like it was called Challenger Cup in season 4 with like Paul. I actually started out my first team, or not my first team, but my first like actual team where we like won a few games was like with Paul, Madman Mark, remember them, Shing,
Yeah. Ooh,
Left
those
Syndrome.
are some names I
Yeah,
haven't heard in a long time.
yeah, Left Syndrome, Risky Ace, yeah,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of fun. That's how me and Paul are, good friends now. And I always thought he was a beast. All my friends used to think that, oh, Paul's just a ranked player. He's not going to amount to anything. And I used to always say, Paul's going to win Worlds someday. I literally, back in season 4, I said, this guy's going to win Worlds. And, he's won twice. And anyway, so yeah, I mean, SOC, we got Challenger Cup. We always lose, like every tournament, whatever we play. We win 1 round or 2 rounds and we lose. It's like a more experienced team. And then SML, I joined with Stanford Soccer, like Risky Ace, Left Syndrome. No, it was like Wowie, I think, after a little bit. Wowie, Left Syndrome, Sam, and we had Malzov for a little bit, and we had Shadow Chair for a little bit.
Yep.
And that was a lot of fun. I was definitely very young and mature, and I was a really bad teammate. I wasn't like that bad. I was just like kind of like trolly. I was way too troll. And we won a lot there, except to versus Paul's team. We only beat Paul's team, but we won. We were like second, first place, but like the entire like season, pretty much. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. Scrims weren't too serious, and nothing was too serious. Scrim at 7, chill for a little bit, and it was an enjoyable time. I had no complaints really with any of those players or anything. Then I had a trifecta spot, season 5, going to season 6, and then I lost that like last second. I guess Shook like to change his mind or whatever. Then I was really hungry. I was grinding really hard still. I got a sub on Splice. I think that helped me a lot. The first week I scrimmed at Splice, I learned so much. Like I flew out like a week before the LAN game, and I scrimmed with him. And I learned like so much. Like Divios was there as well, like kind of teaching me things, and or like he was on the call and teaching me things. And it was a lot of fun. I probably like I literally got rank 1 as soon as I got there. It was like my first time on good ping, and it was a great time. Then I think I got an Armada with MSI. That was pretty fun. We we just went in there like guns blazing, YOLO style.
That's a classic Smite set, by the way.
Yeah, as a classic. And I think I did pretty well there, so
Yeah.
got a little bit more recognition, I think, and gun Splice. And Splice, I think, in my opinion, I was like a decent teammate. I was late a few times. It was like I had to like walk across the apartment, so it would, I already sleep pretty badly, so it's already painful for me. So I had to walk like 7 minutes from my apartment to their apartment to play. So I'd be late a few times, stuff like that. But I was a little troll, but I wasn't like toxic or anything. And Renegades, I love all those people still. But I deeply regret like a lot of like the things I like kind of did. And I didn't do it to like be malicious or anything. I just had a rough year, I guess. And I got my own head. Kind of like I would show up late sometimes, or I would not care, or because it was my first time like actually like losing consistently. On Spice, we won every game. The only time we lost was to Renegades and Set 2 and Worlds. And so it was my first time kind of like losing consistently, and I was thought like, am I washed? And I was just getting in my own head, and I made a lot of mistakes there. I wish I could like go back in time and not do those mistakes, but I mean, I learned a lot, right? And this team, I haven't done pretty much any of those mistakes like at all. Like completely 180. I always show up early. I'm always like try to be like the first or second one there. I always try to make the lobby. I always I'm always like thinking about the game, talking to my team about it. I never like tilt or rage or whatever. So there's a lot of improvement there. So that's kind of like the course of what's happened and what I've learned over the years.
Sure.
Like trolling from like SML, I learned not to troll or yell bang every time I Herkle. Or and Spice, I learned to try to be more early on time because I wasn't too late on Renegades too much, but on Spice I was a bit late, so I tried not to be late, try to be more serious. And Renegades, I learned not to be toxic or not to be down on myself. So it was like a big lessons I've learned from all those teams.
I did want to ask, we're sort of talking about your SPL Smite career on the whole here. Can you talk maybe about some rivals that you might have had throughout your Smite career? And then sort of the flip side of that, are there any people who've been mentors or who have helped you out on your career getting into the SML or SPL and things like that?
Yeah, mentors. I'll go for mentors first.
Sure.
Aurora and Kabam are like the two biggest mentors I've had.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely taught me a lot of like, um, how to, how to play the game pretty much. Like they kind of a big reason why who I am,
Mm-hmm.
especially when the season 7. Kabam real life was a big mentor. Like I, was bronze IRL,
Mm-hmm.
and he helped me a lot with things, driving me around, stuff like that, doing whatever I needed, helped me with real life stuff. And then Aurora helped me a lot as well, like buying me stuff. If I didn't have like cash at the start or whatever. And Kabam or Aurora, also taught me a lot in game as well. And Divios is probably the biggest mentor I've had over the years because I just watch his stream and I always learn something, or I watch him in SP, always learn something. And Zap has been a really big mentor. I've learned a lot so far. Rivals, honestly, I don't have any rivals. I can't really think of any rivals.
Maybe
I have people I like to beat. I mean, my only rival is probably Haddix.
Sure.
It's Haddix and Jake probably, or like maybe even all of Bolts because whatever happened. But I mean, I love all of them. Like I would gladly team with them again, or hang out with them, or be friends with them, or whatever. And me and Haddix are friends. Like we've been best friends since like not best friends. I mean, we're really good friends, but we've been close since like 2014 since I got started Smite. So we've kind of like grown up together, and that's my boy. And we kind of went separate paths. I got an SPL, and he would quit sometimes, or he would just chill. And now he's on his own team, on my own team, so we kind of do our own thing. But we're still really, really closely knit, and I love that guy. But I want to beat, like, I can't stand losing to him and Jake at all. So I have to beat them every time.
Those are some rivals, I would say.
Yeah. Those are my boys, but I want to beat them so bad. So
yeah. I feel you there. All right, we're basically at the end of the interview here, and now is when I ask, I give a soapbox to the players, and I ask, who you're beefing with, who's showing up late to scribs. Obviously, not you anymore. Who you trying to call out? Is there anything that people are doing in the game that's really pissing you off or making you really happy? The soapbox, the floor is yours here, Solar0rTroll. So, and feel free to shout out whoever you want to shout out as well.
Yeah, layers. Fuck you, no, I'm kidding. My entire team. Fuck, no, I'm kidding. I mean, trying to think. I mean, everything's been pretty fine. I mean, nothing really. Nothing really. I don't have anyone to shout out. I mean, shout out to all the fans. I guess. I mean, they've been supporting us even through losses and all that.
Yep.
And shout out to my mom, especially for supporting me. I've been going through kind of a hard time, so shout out to my mom. And shout out to Slaney. He's been a great coach. Just say that over this past these past few months, he's been an amazing coach, and he's helped me a lot. So shout out to Slaney.
Not going to call any other solo lane or a tower boy or anything like that. I try to stir the pot a little bit. It's okay.
I like all the solo laners. They're good. I'll call out I'll call some of the mid laners maybe all of them.
All of them? Yeah.
I mean, screw all the ADCs too. All the carry players, dude, and junglers. Yeah, all those roles. I mean, they kind of suck. But yeah, shout out to Slaney.
All right, thank you so much for joining me for this interview. Also, shout out to shop.smiteproleague.com. Get yourself some nice merch. I see you're rocking that Solar Scarabs jersey. I'm rocking a nice Kings jersey here. So be sure to support all your favorite SPL players and teams at shop.smiteproleague.com. Thank you so much, Jacob, for joining me, and wish you and the Scarabs the best of luck in Phase 2 and going into Worlds.
Thank you.
It's time to make picks for Week 3 of Phase 2 here in the SPL. Let's start with you, Dolson, on the first set of the week. Kings versus Valkyries. Who you got in this one?
Kings. No hesitation.
2-0? 2-1?
2-0 Kings.
2-0 Kings from Dolson. Vonny, how about you?
Yep, 2-0 Kings as well.
Okay, 2-0 Kings for Vonny. Lermy, your thoughts on this set?
Yeah, I'm going to have to follow that up with a 2-0 Kings. I just have not really had the confidence to be inspired by the Valkyries' performance, unfortunately. So
Yeah,
I think the Kings will clean it up.
I'm going 2-0 Kings as well. Shout out.
There you go.
Shop.smitproleague.com. Get your SPL merch.
Inside a power company. Yeah. Shop. That's my pro league.
Yep. All right, buddy. Let's start with you for the next set of week 3. The Bolts versus the Scarabs. Who you got in this one?
I have Bolts, but 2-1. I actually think it's going to be a close set, actually.
Sure, yeah. Just want to remind you guys that this set, I believe, is the first set this year, or maybe in a couple years, that's being played in the studio, if I'm not wrong. So, it's going to be a little bit spicy. Lermy,
Yep.
who you got in this one? Bolts versus Scarabs.
I want to say 2-1 Bolts, but as much as my heart says that, I think if I'm going to go with my brain, it's going to be 2-0 Bolts. We've just been seeing the Bolts pop off, man. I don't know if the Scarabs have it in them to do it. But they are the dragon killers, so maybe they're also going to just change the weather. I don't know. There's not really a good way to kill lightning, but
they're gonna make the sun come out or something. Oh, they are the Solar
yeah.
Scarabs.
Dawn is rising, right?
Match up well to the Bolts, the Solar Scarabs. Yeah, I think I'm with Lermy on this one. The problem is I think the Scarabs are the I don't know team of this year.
Sure.
I don't know. And so in total, I will totally admit I could absolutely see this being a 2-1. If that Scarabs show up, if it's the same Scarabs that we saw to end out the weekend, I think the Bolts will pretty quickly make it a 2-0.
Yeah.
So 2-0. I know I gave you 2 different paths there, but my prediction I think is 2-0.
Yeah, well, my prediction's also 2-0. 2-0 Scarabs, that is. You're never going to catch me not voting for my Bug Boys here.
Oh, 2-0 Scarabs. Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's start with you for the next set of the week, which is the J Dragons versus the Oni Warriors. Who you got in this one?
I think I'm going to say 2-0 Dragons, and I could see the Oni Warriors taking a game, but if we see the Dragons clean up like they did against the Valkyries in this upcoming set, I think it's not really going to be close.
Dolson, how about you? Who you got in this one?
Copy and paste Lermy's analysis there. I think Dragons will take this one 2-0.
Yeah. Vonny, how about you?
Yep, 2-0 as well, I think, for the Dragons.
All right, we're back at the beginning here. Dolson, who you got in the Leviathans versus the Tartarus Titans?
Man, I have a hard time with this one. The Leviathans are going to win, I think. But I think it'll be a 2-1. I think the Titans can put it together for a game this set, and I think they'll take one off the Leviathans. But I think the Leviathans will ultimately win it 2-1.
Sure. Vonny, who you got?
Man,
it's a hard one.
Yeah, my head wants to say the Leviathans, but my heart is gonna say the Titans with obvious bias directing that one. 2-1 though. I do think this will be a very, very close set.
Sure. Lermy, how about you?
You know what? If we don't see Scaredy play Kali, I think this is a 2-1 for the Leviathans. So, no Kali, and then we're good to go.
Sure. All right, Vonny, start us off here. Yeah, Titans versus the Valkyries.
2-0 for Titans. Clean games.
Yeah. Lermy, how about you?
Ooh, I think this is actually going to be a 2-1. I think we're going to see some signs of life from the Valkyries, but I think the Titans will end up taking this. I feel like it's going to be a lot closer than it may seem. The Titans have been cleaning it up just a little bit here, but I think it's going to depend a lot on how their Saturday matchup goes, right? Because if they do well, they take a game. Maybe they have the morale coming into this set to clean it up real fast. But sure. I believe in the Valkyries. I think they have some interesting thoughts behind their experimentation, and maybe they just find what clicks this next week.
Yeah. Dolson?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to click this next week. I think the Titans are going to have a close one against the Leviathans on Saturday, and then come out with a little fire and 2-0 the Valkyries there on Sunday morning.
Perfect. All right, Lermy, finish us off for the week here. J Dragons versus Olympus Bolts. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty nice set of the week.
Sunday's kind of stacked. Holy heck. Anyway, gosh, this is a tough one, right? Because these two has been like King of Consistency Lasbra versus Will Sam show up again for Soccer 2. And honestly, oh gosh, this is so hard. I think it has to be 2-1. I'm gonna go Bolts. Bolts 2-1.
Bolt 2-1.
So tough, man.
Who you got in this one?
I think it's a 2-1 Bolts. I think the Bolts have shown consistency over their last 3 games, and the Dragons have not. I think long term things would probably stabilize between these two teams, but right now the Bolts are doing it, and the Dragons need to get back to doing it. And so I think the Bolts will take it 2-1.
Sure. Vonny, wrap us up here.
I actually think 2-0 Bolts. I think that, this is a Phase 1 playoffs finals rematch. I think the Bolts are going to have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. And I do think that the Dragons have looked worse starting off this split, and the Bolts have looked even better. And so with that considered and that added chip to get revenge for losing in playoffs, I think this is going to be a 2-0 for the Bolts.
2-0 Bolts from Vonny. All right. Yeah, it's going to be a bad phase for the Jade Dragons, I think. I think I'm going to go with the Bolts here, too. Thanks for watching the SPL Rundown this week. Be sure to catch us every week before the SPL. And if you want to catch past episodes or extended cuts, be sure to find them on the APAM Productions YouTube channel and give us a like and subscribe there as well. If you have any ideas for future guests, feel free to contact me on Twitter at APAM2 or at APAM Productions. And finally, I want to give a chance here for my wonderful analysts to shout themselves out. Dolson, why don't we start with you? Where can our viewers find you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter at Dolson Live, or catch me casting SPL. Right now, it's Friday through Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Smite Game. Eventually, it'll be Thursdays as well once the SEC and SPL pivots over to that. So yeah, Twitter and Twitch. That's where you got me.
Yeah, Vonny?
Yep. You can tap in with me on Twitter at Vonny Balboa, and also on your favorite streamers rank games. Take it up.
Yeah. Lermy?
You can find me on Twitter at LermyWormy or on Twitch at LermyWormy with 2 Y's at the end. We do games every single weekday from 9 to 3 to 4 in the morning, and then we have tournaments every other weekend. Really good time. Very fun.
Yeah, go sign up for some of Lermy's tournaments. There are some really fun times, and I think sometimes even some SPL pros venture into these tournaments every now and then.
We might have had Rangu this past weekend. That was pretty fun.
So, maybe test your skill against some of the premier players in the league. Thank you guys so much for joining me on the SPL Rundown. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys next week.